So I'm going to go ahead and present just quickly who's with me here today. So Rachel and Kara, and then I'll let them give a little bit more context around Loudoun County. I also live here in the Washington, D.C. metro area. I'm here in Arlington County, so don't hold that against me, but they've been kind enough to partner with us to go through this webinar here today. So Rachel is joining us really as the Director of Enterprise Solutions from Loudoun County, driving a lot of the innovation efforts across the school district. And then Kara is kind of really with a pulse around driving and executing against that strategy that her and Rachel are trying to execute across the community, the staff, the students, and overall just the innovation of change for education across Loudoun County. I've been at Outsystems for a couple of years now. I was at the Oracle previous here at DataStax, and so I'm familiar with SaaS as a service offerings as well as database. I've now transitioned into modern application development in the last couple of years. So I really enjoyed the previous conversations, the nice foundational one that I think will feed into how we're supporting Loudoun's efforts around modern app development. So the agenda for the next probably 20 minutes or so is going to be just talking about some of the overarching challenges from what we're seeing in the, not only as a result of the pandemic, but I think overall just from market forces that are at play. We'll get specifically into Loudoun County's digital initiatives, so I'll turn it over to Rachel and Kara to really speak through some of what they were faced and what drove them to make a decision to adopt our platform to drive change within the school district. And then I'll probably wrap up a little bit with just a high-level overview of our full-stack application development platform. I know many of you have heard of low-code, no-code, and some of those buzzwords out there. Try to give you a little sense of what makes us unique and differentiates us in the marketplace. And then with some calls to action there as far as if you'd like to learn more about the platform, whether it's starting a personal environment or getting a demonstration to go deeper to see how it would work for you. So with that, I'll turn over to Rachel to give a little bit of background for the audience around Loudoun County, and then I'll touch a little bit on Outsystems. Go ahead, Rachel.
Thanks, Luis. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, thumbs up. So as you can see on the slide, we are located just outside of the District of Columbia. We're a large district. We used to be the fastest growing in the nation. I just started my 21st year, and as is the theme for many K-12 organizations and institutions, we are declining in enrollment for the first time. But I think this last bullet about the money is resonant for a number of reasons. You just heard in the Oracle presentation, one of the presenters indicated that K-12 resources are challenging. So that's really the theme of this. $1 million, or 0.1% of the operating budget for Loudoun County Public Schools is allocated for operational efficiencies for improvements by Kara's IT development teams. And we've talked a bit about the pandemic, but I also wanted to note that in times of crisis, whether it's pandemic, economic crisis, social justice crises, and we certainly experienced all of those things together over the last 18 to 24 months, innovation is often set aside, right? It's replaced by let's just keep the lights on. So we're still coming to grips with the impact from these crises, but now we're facing a hiring shortage in K-12 specifically. So just to echo the theme that resources in K-12 are really a challenge to come by, the only way to be is to be innovative, to quickly shift to doing things differently, to making positive impacts, to reducing technical debt, and offering low-code development as a foundation for innovation and solution delivery is how we ended up with partnering with Outsystems to achieve some of our goals.
Great, thanks, Rachel. And so for many of you, you may have not heard of Outsystems. I know when I first joined, I wasn't too familiar with them in the space. You've probably heard of Appian, Mendix, many of the other low-code and no-code providers. Just a little bit of background on Outsystems. It's a pretty interesting story in that it's been around for quite some time, but based in Portugal. And only probably in the last, I would say, handful of years, we've really started to focus in the Americas market, and we're seeing great traction in general. But we're located across 70 countries, across 22 plus industries, supporting over 1,500 customers, and work quite closely with the large GSIs, so your large service providers, as well as regional partners. And proud to announce that we actually 5 years running are a leader in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for low-code, no-code, as well as multi-experience platforms. And so supporting really what we think is kind of our trajectory over to, you know, a plus $1 billion valuation. But I think, you know, when we look at the market of low-code, no-code, fundamentally what we're talking about is driving automation around software delivery, right? And we'll talk a little bit about what that means and how that actually translates into what Loudoun County was trying to support here and continues to support as they look at their innovation efforts. So I'm going to just walk through at a kind of a macro level a couple of the factors at play that kind of Rachel had touched on that I think, you know, hit on some of the points just from an overall economic standpoint that I think many of us are very familiar and intimate with the pandemic. But then also, I'm sure Rachel will touch on that with Kara around how that's actually translated within the school district. So there's no question that there's a talent shortage, and I think all of us are experiencing that pain. So how do you not only retain top talent, but how do you compete with the more innovative companies around, you know, recruiting those key developers, those architects, and those many within core IT and beyond to support, right, the backlog you need to address, or those projects or those initiatives that are downstream. So really talent, when we think about the impact, is how do you drive productivity, throughput with what you have or with less as a result of some of the cost constraints that many of us are under. And so how do you factor in those hard to hire skills that maybe aren't readily available within your region, your locality? So some of that is how do you start to harness what you have? How do you upskill, train folks that you have? And then if you do need to recruit, how do you also bring new people on board and enable actually more of those capabilities beyond just core IT? And so we'll talk a little bit about extending development capabilities beyond just your traditional IT organizations. Time probably goes without saying, but I think the pandemic definitely shined a light on the importance of urgency, flexibility, adaptability to, I think, unforeseen factors, right? So agility, flexibility, continuous integration and delivery of solutions is crucial, right? So it's not just getting that first, second, third application up and running and in production. It's how do you enhance, how do you get the feedback, how do you continue to modernize that, improve that over time, and leverage your business users, your operational folks that really are intimate with the workflow and the processes to make sure that that experience is going to be great for your constituent base. And then cost. Let's face it, right? There's still very large multi-year, multi-million, billion-dollar projects at play, but I think more and more, how do you rapidly prototype and how do you focus in on driving value quickly and iterate on that in a cost-effective manner? So part of this is, you know, what we talk about with Outsystems, as we'll get into sort of the story. This is not necessarily always a replacement story. This is a coexistence story. This is about having a catalyst within your organization to drive that speed of innovation more quickly and harness some of the development efforts and just really compression of how you assemble solutions and drive them into the market. And so you got to deliver value and you got to mitigate risk along the way. So hopefully Rachel and Kara can kind of speak up with, based on their own experience around how they went through that change management process and how they kind of came out on the other side successful, and they continue to look at driving you know, support and investment in those digital solutions. Rachel?
Thanks, Luis. I would say that this slide really captures how we ended up with our low-code platform of Outsystems. So we noticed that being in the Department of Digital Innovation, we always feel that our students are our future bosses, our future leaders. And we noticed that the students were outpacing the developers in their skill sets. So we thought, isn't that insightful? Let's look to the students for some leadership here on where their careers are headed when it comes down to IT development. And that's really how we ended up in a low-code space. To reiterate what Luis said, this is not a replacement option. This augments or supports our existing stack and suite of tools, but we do have some leaders in our workforce on the IT developer side who are preparing to transition to their next phase, which is to retire. And we just really needed to be current, and we needed to be forward thinking, and we needed to create this pipeline. And the only way to create that pipeline was to be innovative and to work alongside the students and their teachers to complement what they are learning in the classroom.
So we're going to walk through now a little bit more of the Loudoun County story, and so I'll turn it over to Kara to kind of walk through some of the experience. It's better coming from them who actually have kind of been hands-on keyboard working through and driving some of this change. So Kara, I'll turn it over to you to kind of walk through your situation and expand on it.
All right, thank you. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, great. So as we've been talking through, there was a lot that was happening that led us to low code. And this slide represents our operating state and our challenges, and really begins to set the stage for our vision and where we're going here at LCPS, which we'll talk about next on the next slide. But this slide shows our landscape that we're continuing to solution through. So in short, just to kind of summarize this, we have a lot of work that we do here, and we have a very small number of resources. Like we've said, in a world where it's not so easy to gain more staff, and we have very big visions to be innovative and to be proactive in solutioning for our school division, but we've consistently found ourselves not there and not being able to get there, and just really not able to deliver our vision because of these more operational types of challenges. So to set the stage, what you're seeing here, we have a small team of web developers. We have 5 developers total. We recently brought on, as part of this change management process that we've really been embarking on with Outsystems, we've brought on a part-time business analyst as well, who has joined our team, which has been huge and very key in all of this transition. And over time, this small team, we've built over 35 student-focused applications across a variety of high-code platforms. So we are maintaining right now applications across Microsoft Silverlight, across .NET, .NET Core, and then we have a few other platforms kind of sprinkled in there that we are supporting. And these student applications, they're very important to us, and they are really the drivers of our vision that we'll get to on the next slide. They're custom applications. They fill in needs in our technology and our process, and they really support everything that we do here. So just to give a little bit of color context, an example of one of our student-focused applications that we recently built is a summer school registration system, which allows schools to recommend students for summer school. It allows students and families to log in to review those details, to do things like request transportation, and then it allows data to flow from the system that we built into other applications that need it, such as our transportation system for routing, such as our student information system to be able to enroll and schedule students into summer school. So we have a lot of applications that have these complex types of processes that feed into other applications that students are accessing, that staff are accessing, that families are accessing, that communities as a whole are accessing. And so in addition to that, we are also maintaining our departmental applications, our public-facing websites, and then are also looking at the intake of new requests. So hopefully I set the stage there, but we have a very small team, large body of work, and some challenges that are not so unique to, I think, the world of technology and digital solutions and innovation. So we have a very development-heavy team. We have very long development timelines where an average of getting out a new application has been as long as a year to work through the full process. We have a variety of use cases that are sometimes hard to maintain over time because they're so different from one another. And it takes time to get back to each of those whenever those maintenance windows come up. We have inconsistent user experiences just from applications rolling out over time. We have some very complex requests, and then skill sets are hard to maintain as well for these high code systems with such a small team. And Luis, if you go to the next slide, this slide shows where we're heading. So our vision is really to streamline this body of work, to bring these applications that have been very much distributed into one point of entry for our users. As we add applications to this portal, they'll be rebuilt in Outsystems from these various high-code platforms, and we'll enhance them as we're rebuilding them. So we'll be improving the look and feel, we'll be improving the capabilities and the offerings, we'll be improving the process and workflows that each of these applications runs through. And then we're also starting to link them into our other technologies that we have here at LCPS to really just complement our portfolio of things and allow them to all work together. So what you're seeing on this slide is our Student Opportunities portal. And so what happens here is students log into this system and they see all of the opportunities that are available to them. Within the Student Opportunities portal is where we will, as we redevelop our applications on this LowCode platform, we'll have the various tiles where students can see our growing portfolio of applications all in this one place, along with the details of each of those applications. And then from here, the students and the families and even the staff can launch each of these applications and then take action based on those opportunities that they're interested in. So the benefit of this that we're really trying to achieve with our vision here is each application, it'll be built from the same application architecture, from the same foundation, which we're building now. It will apply the same sets of standards. They'll all have the same look and feel. They'll link to our other technology offerings, and they'll have improved user supports that we've been building as we've developed our first couple of applications here, like single sign-in for our students and for our families, which is brand new with us partnering with Outsystems. And we're also taking this opportunity to really focus on our development process and to offer additional user support materials for people to know exactly how to use our applications. And we're also incorporating many more checkpoints for feedback to be able to do an iterative development process as opposed to just this big bang release of an application. So as of today, we have launched 2 applications. Over the past 12 months, we've really been focused on this transition to Outsystems and releasing some new applications, and these are the 2 that we've launched so far. We have a summer program registration and a teacher cadet program that students are able to show interest to, and then it kicks off a workflow process for our teacher cadet program. And Luis, if you go to the next slide, this is the other place that we are looking at and working on now, which is developing our future-facing roadmap. So we're now in this really interesting place where we're maintaining our high-code applications while also planning for transition to Outsystems and this low-code platform. And so this is how we expect to be able to move forward over these next several months, couple of years, is we're focused now in the early stages on building the foundation, on delivering our first applications. We've now delivered 2 applications, and then taking a look at our team and adding resources that we need to be successful, which, like I said, we've recently brought on a business analyst, and looking at defining our development process. And our curve of growth is really, it's flat right now as we build out all of this. And then we expect that as we get our foundation set up, we build out these reusable components, our expansion time, it'll be steep in terms of rapid development. And we'll be able to bring on a lot more applications more quickly and cut down our development time. And then as we reach maturity, we'll start to flatten out. And that's really where we will be streamlining our development process, improving all of our integrations, reducing our backlog, and being able to really reach our vision of becoming proactive in solutioning for LCPS.
Yeah, I think, Kara, you raise an interesting point as far as the parallel work streams of not only rebuilding, right, or even just net new greenfield applications, but also migrating existing. I think that's a common theme that we see, and we'll get into some of the full stack capabilities. But I think part of the, I guess, the value add that we see not only with Loudoun, but with other, K through 12 and higher ed institutions and frankly other industries is that there's always a backlog, right? And there's a backlog generally of existing applications, and there's always the balance of getting those to where they need to be to drive the right experience, but also bringing some of the more new, innovative technologies and solutions in place, right? So I think it's a common theme that we see sort of across the industry of how folks are adopting, low code or no code application development.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's always a backlog.
Yeah, always a backlog, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit at a very high level, and I'm conscious of time, just to emphasize some of the key capabilities of the platform, and happy to take this offline to kind of go deeper into some of the key things that differentiate us. But so low code, no code, as I said earlier, is a bit of a tricky term in that it's tends to lean more on citizen development or the concept thereof, and that's really back to the initial point that we've stressed and that Rachel communicated, which is there's a talent shortage. I think they say within the next couple of years there's going to be over 500,000 plus a deficit of development resources to support, cross industry, right? So and that's growing. Application spend is increasing year over year from 26%, I think just 2 years ago now, to plus 35% of IT spend. And then you've got time factored into that and the cost to manage through that. So a lot of what you're going to see here on the full stack is how to drive that throughput and productivity, and then reusability or assembly of those applications. So how you take commonalities from app 1, app 2, app 3, repurpose them for other applications within your portfolio or your backlog, so your throughput or that flywheel effect is that much greater. So I'll talk a little bit about some of the metrics there that we've been able to drive at a high level. But to start just quickly, this is full stack. We see often clients like Loudoun that are leveraging it from an orchestration layer, so they're leveraging some of the sort of the process and the business logic layer, but really the focus is on UI UX. So how do you bring a more common consumer experience or student experience or teacher experience? And so a lot of that streamlining based on a common architecture that can scale over time, as well as that can drive some of the more modernization with the same look and feel from a branding standpoint. The integrate and extend, I want to really emphasize that because we talk a lot about sort of legacy. To be clear, we integrate really into anything. I'm not a technical resources to go into sort of how we do that, but we have a lot of connectors with a lot of the common traditional ERP and SaaS providers, so Salesforce, Workday, Oracle, SAP. So we interact a lot with your traditional landscape to drive that orchestration, to drive that experience layer in a more modern look and feel from an application standpoint. So that's web, mobile, progressive web applications. And then the full lifecycle management. I touched on it a little bit, but that's really key here, which is, I think the STL process, as Kara mentioned, it can be quite intensive, particularly when you have a very fragmented and highly customized or configured sets of applications across your ecosystem, right? So how do you begin to streamline that in a way that you can start to drive more throughput through the lifecycle? So the design piece is always extensive, right? But then you've got the development piece, and then you've got the ongoing management of that, right? I think Rachel said it really well. You don't want your staff spending 60+% of their time maintaining, and keeping the lights on, right? Because they're going to go. They're going to go somewhere else where they're not spending majority of their time, just managing, maintaining, supporting existing systems, right? We're seeing that happen across industry. So how do you give them innovation or the tools to innovate, solve problems? And experiences is really kind of the last piece here that I'll focus in on. This is about look and feel and common experience for all your user base or constituent base. So as we go through with just a couple of minutes left, this is about scale, security, and performance across the enterprise. So we're working with smaller development groups as well as 150, 200 plus development teams. So this is really around driving productivity and standardization of code. So that, as I mentioned, I kind of touched on really where those areas of amplification are, which is in that configuration and assembly process. That's really where you're going to start to get that throughput. And I think you just have to evaluate and look at the various providers that are out in the marketplace to see which ones can do it at scale. So really where we focus in on, to wrap it up here with just a few handful of slides, is there's 4 common digital transformation initiatives that we support, right? There's customer experience driven, right? There's workplace innovation, there's process automation, and application modernization. There's a lot of, we see customers that start, for instance, with a COVID app or a telemedicine or teleportal application for a healthcare or life sciences institution. We see customers that are doing a large, massive modernization around Lotus Notes or mainframe modernization. So it's really based upon what's driving you to deliver more transformation or modernization across your business. And so the nice thing is that with Loudoun, they're seeing, kind of from the front and the back end to drive really, I think, more of a innovation effort across a number of different types of application in and outside of the school district. So when you look at sort of what I'll leave you with just about a minute left, is take the next step. I think we're now living in an era where you have to experiment. This is all about agility, rapid prototyping, and user feedback from many of your constituents that maybe have not felt part of the process, right? So I think, Rachel, hopefully you and Kara would agree, is that this is about taking IT and really being a partner to the business or partner to your constituent base and less of a bottleneck, right? And we're seeing hopefully some of that transformation happening within Loudoun County, and we're just delighted to be part of that with them in the future to hopefully support more innovation for them, not only here at the rest of this year, but moving into next year and beyond. So with that, Rob, I'll turn that over back to you.
Oh, what a great story. And I'm sure all the citizens of Loudoun County are very happy with the work that Rachel and Kara are doing to ensure all of their students are well trained and taking advantage of this. And again, it's just a general theme that we see continually. It's very hard to recruit developers. And, there's a general rule of thumb where I hear not only education, but other industries, if you can program the home screen of your phone now through tools like Outsystems and low no-code development, you can program incredibly powerful solutions without requiring 20 years of hardcore programming experience. And it's, again, much like we've heard earlier about the cloud. Everything is changing rapidly, and we really appreciate your time. I'll let Karen and Rachel get back to their students and teachers, and we'll let Luis take care of other clients. And thank you all very much as we keep things moving along.